the sports betting is sometimes still a little bit complicated to understand. So I think what I really love to see is a continued improvement of the user experience and ultimately also simplification.
Welcome back to another edition of the Business of Betting podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Edelstein, senior analyst with InGame.com. I am joined today by Patrick Mostboeck. He is the senior vice president of fan engagement for Sportradar. Patrick, good morning. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So I'm detecting a North Jersey accent. Is that what I'm hearing?
Not really. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm talking here from Europe, more specifically from Austria. But giving my best, you can understand me properly.
Excellent. So, I really want to start with Sportradar in general. I mean, everyone in the industry knows Sportradar. They know the name. I think there might be a little bit of a disconnect between what we think we know and what Sportradar actually is. So why don't you just give us like a very brief overview of Sportradar and the job that the company does, and then we're going to get into exactly what you do.
Sure. More than happy to do that and to shed some light for those that need it. So Sportradar overall, we are a NASDAQ-listed business at the intersection of sports media, sports betting, and sports technology. And more specifically, what we do is that we originate very, very strongly being a sports data business, collecting and processing and distributing sports data for almost 1 million of sports events globally. So that goes from some of the US major leagues over to global soccer, global tennis, global basketball, and much, much more. So really basically everything that is going on in and around sports. And so over time, we've developed a value chain of products from this sports data, but we've also moved into adjacent fields such as video streaming, which has obviously become a quite important retention tool and stimulation tool for sports betting operators. We've moved into advertising, which obviously is very, very relevant for especially sports betting operators to acquire new customers. And we also move into additional adjacent areas, such as, for example, iGaming and those areas, which again connect very, very closely to the focus of our core business.
When the New York Giants are playing the Dallas Cowboys in a football game and Dak Prescott drops back to pass, is there someone like for every play, everywhere, in every sport that is tracking this and getting that data feed up and running like as quickly as possible?
From a Sportradar perspective, we cover a whole lot of sports events globally. And I would say that specifically for each and every relevant sports event, we do have some kind of coverage. Obviously, it depends on the depth, and it obviously depends in certain quality criteria and also how this data ultimately is being used. But I think if we look at our content portfolio and what we collect and what we process and what we distribute, I think we basically very much go along the client's needs. And given that we serve clients globally, I think we also obviously have to have a global coverage there.
So I guess you have more than one computer plugged in somewhere, huh?
Yes, that's for sure.
All right. Now, it's interesting to me because I think of, and I think you guys definitely pitch yourself as, a business-to-business company, a B2B company. And your title is Director of Fan Engagement, which indicates more of like a consumer-facing thing. So can you explain to me like what your job is and what role you take in that?
Sure, more than happy to do that, Jeff. So ultimately, what we understand as fan engagement is, given also the position that we take in the industry, it sits exactly at this intersection of sports betting, but also sports media at the end of the day. And this is where we're working on. And this is why, for us, fan engagement very strongly correlates ultimately with betting engagement. And the job I'm doing and ultimately what it is where we want to give a benefit to our clients is about supporting our clients in retaining the clients and basically give solutions to those operators that help them to achieve a better retention with the clients. Obviously not as a self-sufficient benefit, but ultimately to develop more and more educated bets and ultimately more and more business success for our clients.
So can you give me some examples of things that you've done recently that would, go towards that end?
Two of our key focus areas in fan engagement is to really bring, on the one end, the streaming experience to the next level. So one of the key solutions we have developed there is a product called Foresight, where it's all about how can we make the streaming that is happening on sports betting apps, how can we make it more betting specific? And the way how we do it is that we use the power of, again, sports data, and we develop, in addition of the classical streaming that I'm sure you know very well, we develop additional augmentations that come with the stream. And on those augmentations highlight the most important points of a game. So if we talk about the tennis match, those augmentations, for example, highlight the aces, the breakpoints, the most critical aspects of the game. I'm using this because as we speak, there's a very important tennis tournament obviously being played in Wales. At the same time, we use augmentation in a sport like basketball to really work out specific actions and specific moments and momentum that is building up within the game. So which team is on a streak to basically have a couple of points in a row, which team or which specific players are on the downside. And all this information, all this visualization ultimately helps a bettor to better understand what is going on, other than just the visual representation, and therefore make more informed bets. So that is one area of focus that we have, and we span this across the main sports that we are covering. Secondly, we also have statistical tools that we give to our clients, the betting operators, and also here we are trying to basically take those trackers and those statistic solutions to the next level. So in addition to just have a classic head-to-head of certain players, which I'm sure you know all well yourself, we are using tracking data to drive additional meaningful visualizations. For example, 2D visualizations that give the better understanding of what is happening on the court, on the pitch, and so on and so forth. And this is where we see a very meaningful additional engagement happening. And as we are in the business of sports betting, for us, it does not just stop at the engagement, but obviously we want to translate this engagement on the behalf of our clients into additional transactions of the bettors.
How closely do you guys work with sports books on these ideas and stuff? Is it something that you guys work on yourself and you present, or is it more of like a collaborative with your clients?
It's a bit of both, to be honest. We have certain ideas and we try to be at the forefront and come up with new ideas every time, basically. But then what is very important for us is obviously to also get the input and the regular feedback from our clients, because I guess as in every other business, it's sometimes your ideas are good, sometimes your ideas are not as good as you think. And then it's important to get the reality straight in your face from the client. And I think this is where we believe, from a Sportradar perspective, we have a very close relationship with our clients across the different products that we deliver. And this is why we also take the feedback of our clients very, very serious. And we are working very hard to implement this.
As everyone well knows, legalized sports betting online in America is nearing the 8th anniversary, I suppose. So we're still babies when it comes to all this. What are some of the chief differences that you see in America compared to like European markets, and more mature markets? Where are we ahead? Where are we behind? Where do we need to catch up? What works, say in Europe that doesn't necessarily work here? Things along that line.
Sure. And I mean, please, everything I say here, treat it again with the reference that it's me humbly speaking all over the pond. So when we look at the developments and also the scene as it sets itself, for us, obviously, there's quite a few things that are the same or going in the same direction. But obviously, then as in every market, there's key difference or things that are more important. I think what is really very, very good for us to see is that, especially if we talk about fan and betting engagement, obviously, given all the passion, all the engagement that every US sports fan has, it's just great to see this. And I think this very much translates more and more also into sports betting behavior. I think one of the areas which we see gradually developing is when we talk about pre-match versus in-play betting. So I think, just to reference one data point here, I think DraftKings, I saw this week in their annual investor report, has issued a figure that says that they have already achieved more than 50% of in-play betting, which I think just basically shows that also if we talk in-play betting, which I think for the past few years gradually developed, but was still significantly behind what we would probably call European standards of the ratio of in-play betting, is strongly catching up. And I think those 50+%, I obviously can only look in the crystal ball, but it seems that it's moving in a certain direction. And I think this goes with a second specific aspect of the US market, and it's obviously the strong dependency and the strong connection there to the main US leagues and the main US sports. Because I think whilst the rest of the world market is obviously strongly focused on probably 3 sports, with soccer, with tennis, and with basketball, in the US market, obviously it's about the 5 main leagues. And international soccer, obviously very interesting with the World Cup coming up, but this is slowly catching up. And I think this is how the market sets itself together, basically.
You just brought something up I did want to touch on. Every 4 years or so, Americans discover soccer. And, we're about to discover it big time this summer with the World Cup, taking place, here in North America. I would expect that there's going to be a lot of betting on it, more, much more so than any other World Cup. I mean, as sports betting gets more and more mature in this country, what do you guys see as far as the World Cup goes and engagement for American bettors?
You won't be surprised. We have a lot of thoughts, but also a lot of excitement for when this tournament comes up this summer. So I think first up, it really presents a massive customer acquisition opportunity for sportsbook operators. I think on one side in the US market, but also globally, because World Cup is really this prime opportunity where you get additional casual bettors on. Because, and I can give you my very personal example. It's Austria is qualified, I think, for the first time since more around 20 years, and that just brings so much excitement to me as a fan that naturally this engagement translates in additional opportunities. So I think this is the aspect of customer acquisition, but also when it comes to in-play betting, I think what is very interesting there is that through the increase of the matches, this just naturally increases the opportunities to bet. But I think also if we compare this World Cup 2026 with the last World Cup, like basically 4 years ago, it's also very evident that the sports betting industry and all the operators and the actors within it, I think, have done a certain transition, have developed further. It's always a very interesting point of comparison if you compare one World Cup to the other in terms of the business value it created and also the engagement it created. And obviously with this World Cup now being in the US, I think it's a perfect opportunity. And yeah, we are very, very eager to support our clients in capturing this opportunity.
Do you guys work with prediction markets?
So prediction markets for us is really, and we see it as a rapidly developing opportunity in the US. And we believe that we are uniquely positioned also to support our clients with it, not only existing clients, but also new clients. And look, for us at the moment, it's we are closely working with our partners, with our league partners, so the NHL, the MLS, but also new partners that we acquired via the IMGA acquisition. And yeah, I think on the one side, it is about working and capturing this opportunity, but equally important for us is to uphold the integrity, to uphold the accuracy standards that we have. And I think this is really what we can bring to the table, also to the prediction markets. On the one side, is obviously also our knowledge about sports and sports data and all the products that come with it. But equally important, I believe, is all the knowledge that we bring to the table when it comes to integrity, when it comes to accuracy, and all those most essential quality criteria that we bring to the table.
One of the reasons I brought that up just now in relation to the World Cup is like, obviously there's going to be people traveling from all over the world to America, and they're going to be kind of stuck. They're not going to be able to create an account on like American sportsbooks. They lack a social security number. I'm not sure if there's a workaround outside of a prediction market. I almost feel like it's going to be a little bit of a lost opportunity for American sportsbooks. Sure, bettors stateside will probably get on, but if you're coming over and you're in New Jersey, I'm not sure exactly what the process would be for you to get you logged on to a sportsbook, whereas with a prediction market, you certainly can. Going back to live betting for a minute, what is it about? Do you think it's the reason that it's taken off so much quicker and longer time frame in Europe? As you mentioned, the sports that are tennis, soccer, basketball to a little bit of a lesser extent, but tennis and soccer seem to be very well positioned for live betting. Whereas in America, I guess, again, as you said, like DraftKings said, more than 50%. What do you think needs to change for live betting to reach those penetration here in America the same as in Europe?
There's probably a few different bits that need to come together and evolve together. I think the one side, and I've previously mentioned this, it's obviously the sports mix that is a bit kind of special or unique to the US market, which is one thing. I think secondly, it's just that certain things and certain development take time. And obviously, as the market grew and also state by state, it regulated itself. I think this is exactly where we see this gradual development and improvement. I think it's not too different to other markets. And I think the third step, which is probably the most important step, is what I typically call consumer adoption. This is very much about, the one thing is an offer being technically available. So the fact that you can bet basically on markets during a live event. But the second thing is that as a consumer, you really understand what it means. You understand what is on offer. And you also understand basically the benefit and the joy that it brings to you. And I think this is where I come back to the other point. It just takes time for this adoption. I think this is where obviously the operators themselves, but also we, from a Sportradar perspective, we work together, we collaborate to make it as simple, as seamless for the consumer to enjoy this. But still, it takes this certain amount of adoption time to really get there. And I think this is where we then see the percentages growing in terms of the in-play.
One of my personal concerns with live betting is I'm just concerned on the latency, right? Is my feed quick enough? Am I getting information quick enough? Is there anything that you guys do on that end? Like when you guys, you mentioned earlier in our conversation about streaming, if I've got a soccer game coming through you guys, from Austria, am I getting it? Like, am I there? How close to the action am I?
Obviously, and you address the good points. Obviously, part of our job is to make this experience as seamless as possible for you. So if we talk latency, obviously we're not magicians, so we cannot make a feed faster than it actually is. But I think it's clearly our job to not add additional latency to it. And I think this is where it's part of our day in, day out job to deliver the best possible experience to our clients so that they can serve, again, their clients, ultimately the bettors, or ultimately you as a consumer. And I think this is clearly part of our day in, day out job. And this is what we get up every morning to make sure we do the best job we can.
Do you think that, there's a generational divide and that the idea of watching sports is going to be a different vibe going forward?
Probably, yes. I think it's a question we could probably talk for an hour. I believe that if we really compare between the types of consumption that happened maybe 15, 20 years ago and what is happening now, yes, clearly there's a difference, because obviously most fundamentally the device has changed. I think most and equally important, there's just so many options now, not just within sports, but in terms of wider entertainment, that obviously, and this is what I always put front and center in the work we are doing, it's really important for us to keep continuing building products and services that get the attention of fans so that they can create actual engagement, right? And I think it's part of all of our mission, ultimately, working in sports, that we keep engaging new and younger audiences to it on different levels. And so, yes, I think clearly consumption has changed. I can't tell you where it leads us, because if I would know it, I think obviously we would already be on it to build those type of products. But yeah, very clearly we are following it as best as we can.
You said earlier you're not a magician. I'm going to grant the magician powers here. What's the world Sports Radar would like to see, the world of sports betting look like in 5 years? When I log on to my sports betting app, what should I be seeing? What should I be experiencing?
I think for us, it's really all about ultimately great consumer experience. So I think it has to work. It has to work seamlessly. It has to be simple. It has to offer great customer choice. It has to be visually not only impressive, but also specific to the experience. What I mean by that is, and I touched on this point earlier, is I think we very much think and focus on how can we make an experience more betting focused, so that it's not just a secondary experience from a broadcast you watch on your phone or on your connected TV, but really specific to the app and the entertainment environment you're in. So I think this is what we relentlessly focus on, both from a product standpoint, but then also operationally, because aside from the aspect of building those products, what is critically important in sports betting, as you know very well, is that you deliver it day in, day out on a scale that is needed by our clients, betting operators, because they are essentially 24/7, 365 businesses.
As someone in your position, do you see a difference? Because I think I do, but do you see a difference between the average American bettor compared to the average European bettor? Before you answer, let me tell you what I vibe. I feel and maybe just because it's just been ingrained in the European culture longer, but I feel for the general sense is it's part of like the game basically in Europe, where it's a small, but it's not a big number. It's a smaller number that people are betting, and it's part of the experience. Whereas I feel like in America, there's still a pretty good percentage of people who are looking at it as a way to, hit a big parlay, get rich quick. And it's not yet so much ingrained as like, I'm watching the game, I'll throw $10 on it just for the fun of it, as opposed to the action.
Well, I can see where you're coming from, but I think equally, I think in both the markets you were just comparing, I think there is those more casual bettors and there is the more kind of, let's call them VIP or professional bettors. And I think we clearly see those type of consumers in both markets. You might have a point in maybe the ratios or the percentages of those consumer groups being a little bit different. But I think both of those consumer groups they need to be served ultimately. I don't have any data at hand to really prove it's different between Europe or US. So it's, I understand where you're coming from and I think it makes sense, but it's a little bit hard for me to grasp as we speak.
What about artificial intelligence? I'm a proponent of AI. I come from the side, show me something in the history of human culture that's made life easier. And we're like, nah, I don't want it. Right. So like AI is here. It's only going to get better. It's only going to become more and more part of our daily lives, both, in front of us and behind the scenes. How heavily is Sportradar leaning into AI? How do you use AI? And how is it working towards like personalizing the experience, I guess, for better?
I think from a Sportradar perspective, it's really two key aspects that we're looking at. The one aspect, a little bit more boring, I would say, but definitely needed, is everything when it comes to making our lives more efficient and basically optimizing all our operations and all the kinds of repetitive tasks that we can improve via the means of AI and Gen AI. So I think that is the one area. I think the area we typically like to talk more, and where it obviously gets us more excited because it goes more into development of new experiences, how we use AI in developing new experiences that are typically more immersive, more personalized, and ultimately lead consumers to retain for longer. So giving you again 2 examples here. One of them is the work we're doing on Sportradar side. We're using AI to augment data points on top of a game. And the way AI is being used there is to really identify the most relevant points of the game. This is where it helps us a lot. And secondly, also when we talk again about the live match trackers, also here we use the power of AI to deliver this incrementally immersive experience. But both areas, the efficiency play, but also creating better and new experience, is what we are deeply into as we speak.
What would you call like the most, underrated and overrated aspects of what it is, you guys do over there and in sports betting in general, I guess? Like, what don't we know that we should know about you guys? What do we know that it's like, it's not that important?
I would say, I think when I go out there to work about sport, I think typically I would say the vast majority of people out there, especially in our industry, know about Sportradar, but I think typically they do not know the breadth and depth of offering that we have. So when it really comes to from our core value chain in sports data and everything that comes with it, into the area of streaming, into the area of integrity, into the partnerships that we are developing, and so on and so forth. So it's really the breadth and depth of the offering that comes together, the scale it has for the portfolio we have. And I think this is really also why, for me personally, it's very exciting working for Sportradar together with the colleagues and trying to push on.
With the streaming, is that something that is currently bigger in Europe than in America? Because I could see how that would definitely work to keep people, engaged and on the app if I could watch when I'm gambling on.
It's different in the sense of, obviously, when we talk about streaming, it's a fact that we have different rights portfolios in different parts of the markets. Obviously, the betting streaming rights are subsidiary in a certain sense from the general media rights. And as a consequence of that, obviously, there's geographic limitations to that in the light of where obviously media rights are distributed. And as such, you're probably right in the perception that our portfolio in the other parts of the world versus the US is slightly different. Regardless, I think we see very, very specific success in the US. And I think there's 2 areas I can point out. The one is that specifically on what we call made for betting content, there's very strong interest. I love to tell the table tennis story where it's really crazy, the engagement and the adoption that we see from the consumers out there. That is one. But then secondly, what is also very interesting to see is that a lot of the international competitions in baseball and basketball get a lot of engagement on the betting platforms of US operators. And I think for them, this is really a great outlet. And if you were to ask international basketball or baseball leagues, for them, betting operators are also a very important distribution channel to basically get eyeballs out of their competition and to their fans for what they are doing. And I think this is both very exciting for us, but also creates a strong business opportunity.
In your job, do you get to have time with actual bettors, and hear their thoughts?
We also do stuff like focus groups and so on. So obviously, we do not only kind of try to stay close to our actual clients, but also to the consumers. So yes, we try to basically get all views at hand.
All right, I'm going to give you the magic wand one more time here. If you could change something about the way sports betting works, and we'll put it towards the American idea, what would you change? What would you immediately say? Yeah, let's do this a little bit differently.
I think one thing that always strikes me is basically still the consumer experience, because I feel that sports betting is sometimes still a little bit complicated to understand. So I think what I really love to see is a continued improvement of the user experience and ultimately also simplification of the user experience, because I think that would also help and lead the way to the understanding of sports betting also as a casual fan behavior, right? Back to your point of the different consumer types. I think this is really where I think a strong growth opportunity is. And also for me, with my background, really caring deeply about engagement, I think this is a big opportunity.
I want to be able, I know what I'm doing, but if I want to bet, James Harden points and assists, it's still like 4, 5, 6 clicks I got to make. I want to be able to pick up my phone and say, DraftKings, James Harden points and assist over. And I want that to be populated in my bet slip. I mean, tell me when that's going to happen.
We are going in the same direction there. It's all about simplification and being being able to offer clearly a breadth of opportunities, but doing it in a simplified way. I think there's a big opportunity there.
How did you get involved in this business? Were you a sports bettor yourself, or did this stuff interest you, or how'd you land here?
No, my background very much is in media rights and OTT consumer streaming, and then step by step came into these areas.
Well, that's interesting. As director of fan engagement, so it really does sound like the streaming seems to be like really the next big jump and hurdle and an opportunity for clients.
Exactly. It's not just kind of live streaming. I think there's various forms and types of videos, also short form video and the use of it. I mean, I'm not sure how your customer behavior is, but if I look at how I spend my time on my phone, a lot of it is in and around video. And I think it can and will be pretty much the same also in and around sports betting experiences.
Real quick, you spoke about the made for betting sports. Do you see it I know I can't remember the name of the company. They have like 150 different products, card, jiu-jitsu, all this crazy stuff. Do you see that continuing to grow?
So there clearly is a demand. I think what is important for us is obviously that in order to cater for this demand is on the one side, yes, you need a certain content portfolio, but I think this content portfolio needs to come along with a certain quality, accuracy, so that we can uphold the same standards also in terms of integrity as for our, let's call it our classic sports portfolio. So I think as long as this is ensured, yes, there is a continued demand and there's a growing demand, and we're looking at this with equal excitement.
You coming over the pond flying over the ocean to watch some Austria World Cup soccer this year?
Working on that. not yet.
All right. Well, if you end up in New Jersey, you let me know. We'll take you out for a cocktail and we'll show you the States.
Thanks. I much appreciate it.
Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today. It was eye-opening because, again, it's fascinating to me how many parts of the business everyone just takes for granted, and you don't really know what goes on behind the scenes. So I really appreciate you pulling back the curtain a little bit today on Sportradar, what they do, and your job with it. And I say good luck to Austria. I hope you guys make it through, at least until you find yourself facing us, and then it's all bets are off.
Thanks, Jeff. See you soon, and thanks for taking the time.